Howdy with you. Howdy with you? Howdy, all of you, delicious people. I think howdy with you would have probably went a little bit better. So, going into this episode, we are season 5, episode 4. So, let's go into more guessing and let's pick and choose who we are going to amuse ourselves with this week of who the mass singers are. By and large, I will let you know by the very end of the episode who had actually gone masked by showcasing a photo. But in the very beginning of this, I am going to otherwise tell you by disguised, mascotted name of sorts who had gone home this week. So, in this episode, we had Grandpa Monster going home. And interestingly enough, he was the one that opened the show. So, out of all the people that honestly were to have gone home, I thought it was a little odd that Grandpa Monster had gone home. But we'll get to who I assume all these people are, and we'll also get to the reveal towards the end of the show. So, we had it to where Nicole was really going with the guessing of Logan or Jake Paul within Grandpa Monster doing his performance. I think when hearing the clue package and hearing a boxer, but also there was kind of a lot of barrage of different kind of things all together. I was like, okay, so boxer, but there's a lot more to do with that, and there's headphones in the package, in the clue package. So immediately when I'm thinking of headphones, I'm thinking of a YouTuber or podcaster or a streamer of sorts, and so when Nicole said Logan Paul, I'm like, oh yeah, like I am familiar with Logan Paul being on the YouTube platform. I know he had done some things in, I believe, Japan that a lot of people gave him grief about and whatever, but we move on with our lives. Mistakes can happen and so on and so forth, but sometimes some people are honestly looking for a video to be heavily viral. So, hey, like, I can understand anybody wanting to put up a video that they hoped would really get viral, and maybe that video went far too far. So, it ends up happening. Stuff happens. People move on. People make mistakes. So, going on into here, we have Logan Paul, who has done movies, has done shows, and stuff along those lines. So, when knowing about Logan Paul and not quite exactly being familiar with Jake Paul, I was like, well, maybe it's either one of these people, because I don't freaking know. I was guessing the week before any random person that I knew was an athlete and who could sing, or bizarrely, there was some clue about a former child star that didn't quite seem to make sense to me when going into this week. I don't know. I don't know what that meant. Of like a past success or something like that. I guess maybe it could be any number of things. So, we'll see by the end of the episode if either one of these characters are this guy or this woman or this person or these people, because you never know with this show. There could be like 12 different people all inside one person, and who knows. So moving on. The Piglet. The more and more I hear Piglet, the more and more I basically am confirming now that it's Nick Lachey. There is no second guessing. There is no like, oh, I think it could be someone else. No. I think the judges are kind of getting closer to think of who this person is. But I also feel every single time there is a boy bander on this show, every single time they always go to JC Chazé which, of course, if I'm even pronouncing that right, had been in a number of different kind of things, as well as being in sync. And reasonably, I consistently go to, well, what does this sound like? And it doesn't exactly sound like it doesn't exactly sound like JC Chazé. It sounds more like Nick Lachey. So we'll figure out when this character eventually gets to be a thing in our lives, who will be unmasked, I'm assuming, at some point. Because, yeah, could sing really well, but there's got to be something more than that. So, probably for a lot of women out there, they're probably going to try to keep Piglet alive. But I don't know, justifiably, we'll see what happens with Piglet. So, moving on. The Black Swan is kind of very much more up in the air than I thought of the previous week. So, Black Swan, really an impressive performance again this week. My assumptions are probably any number of people at this point. We have it to where I still assume maybe this is Vanessa Hudgens or Solange Knowles, which is not Beyonce, but Beyonce's sister. And the judges came up with a consensus of maybe Demi Lovato. The consensus of which that I have made for Black Swan this week is it could have been anybody, because it doesn't matter, because this is a free guess still. And if anybody going along with this show knows and thinks that they have a pretty good guess on any number of these people, definitely let me know. Definitely help me out, without a doubt. It would be great to come up with a consensus of any of these characters. And I think it would be very interesting to see what people have in their brain noggins to say, oh yeah, this perfectly works for so-and-so character. Here's also my thing. I think I might have a different opinion about another character, I think, when we get to the season wrap up, because it seems that I think that there was a clue that is kind of floating around on everyone's mind, and everyone's saying, oh, well, it's got to be this actor. And I don't know, we'll see if reasonably that is actually true, because more than one guess is going to cement, hopefully, things to be right. When looking at Solange, if I'm even pronouncing that right, and Knowles and Demi Lovato, the one thing that doesn't quite make sense is both of them had said, or the Black Swan had said the first time around that they were out of their element. I'm like, well, having either Demi Lovato or Miss Knowles or whatever singing is not exactly out of their element. Vanessa Hudgens hasn't sang in a very long time. So you have a person that has to either be an actress or something that makes a lot more sense to have a person be out of their element. But again, out of their element could be any number of things, and any other meanings of just saying out of their element could be wearing this costume, performing in this kind of getup, being able to barely see, or whatever could maybe mean out of their element. So it could be a toss-up here. So let's move on. So we have it to where go with Ken's choice for this character, the Masked Singer, Chameleon. So reasonably, I was like, you know what? Chameleon, there's some kind of give and take with this character. There's some times where I'm like, you know what? This character is really fun, but then also I could say it's like, I don't know how long this character is really going to last. If anything, he's kind of visually interesting, and I think that's the best thing about this show. you have some very wild and wacky characters that just, what the heck is even any of this? So I went with Ken's guess because he chose Dwight Jordan, I believe, from the LA Lakers sometime before. Now he's picking uh, Iman Shumpert from basketball. I don't know exactly what team he's from, but basketball. So when I looked him up on Google, I was like, okay, well, definitely tall enough, definitely skinny enough, and so we'll see. We'll see if Ken is right on the athlete guess. Because we have Ken also telling us that supposedly this athlete has a recording contract. So I don't know. We'll see how well this works out. So speaking of working out, let's move on. We had another wild card tonight, which closed out the episode. And so I was immediately thinking, I'm like, oh my god, don't. I'm waiting for the one time we have a wild card come in here that ends up going immediately home. I'm gonna be like, oh my god, we had a wild card that like was on for one episode and then went home. I'm waiting for that moment because it's happened now twice. So speaking of wild card, I think I'll cover that in the seasonal wrap up. So immediately when you hear of the clues of the crab, supposedly the clues had mentioned that there had been some family problems, some family issues, and a lot of troubles. And so when hearing the voice, I kind of immediately went to Bobby Brown because Whitney Houston passing away and a number of other problems that had spurned for Bobby Brown. You know what? I was kind of like, well, maybe it could be Bobby Brown. I haven't seen him in a fairly long time. I kind of threw Donnie Wahlberg out there just for giggles because I had nothing better to do. And because I'm assuming it's probably Bobby Brown. I know a lot of people are probably assessing that it's probably somebody from New Edition. And so, yeah, reasonably, the reason why this picture is the way it is because I had to do this while the show was going on, and I could not find a picture quick enough, so I just chose this one. So the magic of having to quickly come up with a photo in mere seconds to make the guessing and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's what happens when you do a guessing while you're on the show. So something like this can definitely showcase that I'm actually doing this while I'm watching the show, because why would I have a picture that doesn't look the cleanest or coolest or whatever? Because reasonably, this was the quickest photo that I could find. And so, yeah, we'll see if any number of these guesses during the following days are correct. So let's go out of our way to eventually say who was Grandpa Monster. So there is no having to pause the video this week. I was able to get... here's the problem. Facebook's and Google's and whatever, I have problems getting photos a lot. I have problems getting reveals a lot. And because this happened on this day, hours ago. And so it's really actually quite difficult this season to get this stuff revealed or get these photos out or get whatever. So when looking at it, I'm like, yeah, this is so freaking difficult to be able to do this time around compared to the other seasons where it's just like, man, this is a breeze. I can find this, I can get that, and it's easy. So, you know what? This guy has a pink mustache. Who is he, Markiplier? Maybe he's Markiplier. Maybe we'll find that out. Maybe he'll be Markiplier. So now is about that time to reveal who is the Grandpa Monster right now. So if you don't want to get spoiled, go into Hulu and check this show out via recapping or whatever you want to do. But at the end of the day, it's time to say who Grandpa Monster was right now. Logan Paul was Grandpa Monster. A lot of people would probably make the consensus, oh, well, you just Googled this, or you, because I found out later while I was looking for photos of stuff to finish up this, because I needed to get the, this picture. I needed to get also the recap and stuff like that into Facebook and from Facebook and stuff like that. So when trying to get this photo, I kind of realized that people on Google had picked Logan Paul. I'm like, okay, sure. So a lot of people could make the consensus, oh yeah, well you don't know anything about Logan Paul. I do know a couple of things. I remember Logan Paul being Logan Pollution when he was doing this CGI'd computer thing, adding all these people to have their darker versions of themselves when Markiplier was Darkiplier and Jack was his anti-Septiceye. And Logan Pollution was one of the darker characters, and then we had several of the YouTubers that are kind of well known, all being in the background, just kind of doing their variation of their evil selves. If anything, there's a really cool song that Indigo, a YouTuber named Indigo, did with that. He remixed that song, and it sounds really awesome. It sounds really cool. And so Logan Paul, he has been a boxer. He has done movies. I think he was in one film called Thinner, or a show called Thinner. I'm not quite 100% sure exactly what that was. I was looking for the original movie, The Thinner, and I ended up stumbling upon a movie or show that Logan Paul had done while I was researching another movie. So, yeah, good for him. Good for him. I think I had also seen him in a couple kind of trailers of some movies and stuff here and there. So good for him that he's kind of mixing it up, and he's podcasting and being an internet personality, which, yeah, I guess when really looking at it, a lot of these bigger YouTubers have a ton of different platforms, so you can't really just say, oh, well, he's a just YouTuber, or he's a Twitcher, or he's a whoever, because if you have them on like 12 different kind of platforms that they all do all of their videos on and kind of just recycle that everywhere and whatever, yeah. But yeah, I really enjoyed Logan Paul's performance. Eventually, maybe he'll go into doing singing or something along those lines if that's what he wants to do. But from what also he was saying is like, man, this was crazy to get involved in this. It was bizarre for him to try and have been this internet personality, let's just say, and try to do this show. It was wild. And so I thought that Logan Paul was really fun, and he was really throwing me off for the longest time. If anything, luckily the clue packages helped me out more so than the actual performance, because I could have not have deciphered it was Logan Paul by the tone of voice. I couldn't have. So good for Logan Paul being really good at what he does. Because I was like, man, I was thinking like all kinds of things with Logan Paul, but luckily I came to the consensus of just saying, you know what, maybe Nicole has something right. And Like, she kept saying twice how she thought it was either Logan or Jake Paul. Sadly enough, at the end of it, she went with Jake Paul. And Logan was like, seriously? Do I look like a Jake Paul to you? It was hilarious. But yeah, I kind of went with that same consensus as well. I went with the boxer route because knowing full well that Jake Paul has boxed before, and they have been in TMZ lately for Dana White going and talking about either, I think, Jake Paul and whoever trying to call out some actual legitimate athletes and stuff along those lines. So yeah, Logan Paul. I'm going to get out of here. But let's do the recapping and let's get that out of the way. So, the Orca. Here is the thing. So, I don't know this person's entire full name because I did not take that kind of time before we started this video. And plus, I don't really think it matters because they're not up right now. But we do have a recapping here, and for the most part, Snail, of course, was Kermit. Raccoon, of course, was Danny Trejo, and of course, Phoenix was Caitlyn Jenner, and so the wild card was the Crab. So, I'm assuming the Orca. People are saying that this is a clue to have Rami, the guy that was from Mr. Robot, the guy who was from Bohemian Rhapsody, the main character of that movie, for the most part, besides the entire band of Queen. Really, I guess I can make that consensus of quite possibly that being the Orca. But to me, I could also make the consensus of the Orca also being Jared Leto, because I remember that Jared Leto was a part of that group in the, I think, Oscars, where there was a guy that was delivering pizza to the Oscar celebrities, and Jared Leto actually was a part of that group. But a lot of people would say, oh, no, it's Raimi, because the story which Orca had used is exactly like Raimi's backstory, because he used to be a guy that worked at a pizza place, and he used to put headshots into his pizza boxes to try and see if anyone was going to come after him and try to say, hey, let's make a deal, kind of thing. And eventually it did work out. Also, RoboPine here, it seems that there is evidence of Tyrese having a Masked Singer hoodie, and so we are to naturally assume that this character RoboPine could actually be Tyrese. Tyrese is not 60 years old, so I'm assessing or assuming maybe there are some Masked Singers that are lying about their age or are lying about this and that and whatever, what have you, to try and seal their identity. Or, case in point, Tyrese could quite possibly be another character within this season, and we'll have to come up with that consensus later on. But again, I'm assessing and or assuming we're only going to go with 2 groups this season. Is that my consensus? Is that they're not going and doing like group A, B, C, G, Z? Like, they're not increasing the amount of Masked Singers going home? Or they're maybe quite possibly not doing like a double elimination? Because I remember the very first episode of the first season, they would end up knocking out two people an episode, or like in the pilot episode, they would knock out two people. I guess they're not doing that now. I guess they're just going with a slimmer group to try and maybe get an easier season, which I don't know. Like, to me, that kind of just feels like they're stretching every episode. And maybe they're spending a lot more time into the clue packages of things. And I don't know. Like, to me, I could be won over by a short season. But also, I would like to be able to have a lot more guessing, because if there were more people on this show, I could probably guess a lot more correctly than incorrectly. It kind of limits you to saying, well, man, do I really need to get every single one of these characters correct? Or, man, is this going to blow up in my face because I could just have had one correct and one wrong, and so far we're going really well compared to what's all going on. We have 3 correct and 1 incorrect so far, so I think we're doing well, but reasonably within the following episodes, everything could change. Because there's a lot of characters that I have absolutely no clue who they are. And the further we go along onto this journey, the more I'm going to be like, oh, gee, golly, this was a stupid mistake. If anything, really the seashell and probably the Russian doll, I'm very confused on what exactly they are. So, yeah, we're just really grasping at straws to figure out who these characters will be, and so on and so forth. So, I am going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Okay, goodbye, everybody. Man, all right.